People who have bought flats in blocks that have dangerous Grenfell-type cladding have huge problems with them now. And there are more than 160 of these private blocks like that. That's according to the government's own figures. In a quarter of those blocks, there are no plans in place to try to deal with the cladding. And in many cases, the developers are arguing with the residents over who should pay for that work. Even where there are plans in place, people won't be able to sell or let their flats for years. Our reporter Melanie Abbott has been to New Capitol Quay in Greenwich in South London, where the insurers agreed to pay to have the cladding removed and repaired.
This is the very early stages of work getting underway to remove the cladding from New Capitol Quay in Greenwich. But it's taken a long time to get here. It's been more than 6 months since the insurer agreed that it would cover the costs of this work. I'm off to meet one of the residents to find out what he makes of it all. Are you Yonathan? Hello, I'm Melanie.
Hi there, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Yeah, don't worry about it.
So this is your flat? This is your... Yonathan Sabbah once thought this smart development of 11 blocks alongside the Thames was perfect. Now he worries about the safety of elderly relatives who visit. The building insurer, the NHBC, agreed last year, after a bit of a battle, to cover the cost of the work.
Well, they started this week in one of the buildings. They say it's going to take maybe 26 weeks. And this is not even the most complicated or tallest. Hopefully that 26 weeks are just like a preliminary period during which we learn how to get this work done faster and all that. The building was dangerous. It still remains dangerous. I did inform the concierge about my grandmother being around in case something happened. And then it's kind of like, wait a second. It's not normal to be sending an email every time somebody comes home and stays over the weekend to let somebody else know, oh, in case my building goes on up in flames, is it going to be a year, 2 years, 5 years? Will I be able to remortgage? That has a toll on your kind of mental health.
I've received several emails from people who didn't want to be interviewed, but who do clearly feel that what's happened here could have been handled much better. One of the emails says, all residents want a safe homes to live in, to feel secure, to not feel frightened about what would happen if there was a fire, to be able to sell their properties if they want or need to. We just want to be able to get on with our lives and not feel trapped in fire hazards. One of those who hasn't been able to sell her property but has bought a new home just outside London is Chetna Gulati, and she told me that she now is in a very difficult financial situation.
We are to our eyeballs in debt, but we cannot sell our Greenwich property for the love of money or God for a good few years now. With the little one in our family, we wanted to move to a safer place. We're also sleeping better at night. The house is a detached house made of brick and mortar and not covered in any kind of cladding. We couldn't sell it. We tried, we couldn't sell it, and so we rented it out for now. We're grateful for our current tenants. If they decide to up and leave tomorrow, I have no idea what we'll do. We've made full disclosure about the property and the drawbacks.
Chetna has no date for the work to start on her block, but like other residents, was surprised that planning permission was only applied for in December, 6 months after the NHBC agreed to cover the work. And then one of the blocks was left off the planning application.
I'm putting it down to a human error somewhere. They were a little surprised at having to put in an application for planning permission. I would have imagined that if planning permission were required, then councils would have made that abundantly clear to everyone right at the outset.
What do you make of the fact, though, one building was left off?
I think it's inexcusable. On a personal level, I feel for the residents in that tower, because they must have been in a state of panic to imagine that they've been left high and dry and all by themselves. I mean, anyone at Galliards, unless there's somebody absolutely brand new to the organisation, would probably have been dealing with this development for a while now.
Galliard told me that they have sought suggestions and input from residents about how this work should be carried out on the estate, and that they are trying to maintain openness and listen and incorporate any reasonable suggestions. They also say that there was some initial frustration around the timing of the notice spelling out the requirement for full planning permission, but that's behind us now, and planning permission was received 4 weeks ago. One block was erroneously omitted from the application, but that is now being dealt with, and it won't delay the work on that particular block.
The property value has crashed. We have friends who are living on the development even now and have been trying to sell their house for almost a year and a half now and have got no viewings, no offers. If it were free of flammable cladding, the house would be snapped up for the price of gold dust.
Greenwich Council say they pushed for the cladding to be replaced swiftly and told the developer last August they would need planning permission and gave them a contact to speak to. They've now received an application for the remaining block, which will be considered by the middle of this month. Despite the wait, people here realise they are lucky. There is a plan in place.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds of leaseholders in my constituency and many thousands more across the country are not only still living in privately owned buildings covered in dangerous Grenfell-style cladding, they have no idea whether they will have to pay the full costs of remedial works and interim fire safety measures.
Matthew Pennycook, the Labour MP for Greenwich and Woolwich, in the Commons, asking when the government will act to force developers to pay. The Prime Minister told him,
"We have repeatedly called on private building owners not to pass costs on to leaseholders. As a result of our interventions, 216 owners have either started, completed or have commitments in place to remediate, and 50 are not cooperating, but we're maintaining pressure on those and we rule nothing out. We have established a task force to oversee the remediation of private sector buildings, and that is actively working to do just that."
Tower Hamlets Council in East London is considering enforcement action against the owners of a block of 87 apartments where there's no plan to remove the cladding. This weekend, people in 345 flats in the Green Quarter in Manchester were told after 20 months of arguments that they won't have to pay for removing the cladding. Nick White lives there.
We met with our developers and the building owners, and they had said that they've now established a fund and they can confirm that that fund will be used to replace the cladding and that the leaseholders won't have to pay that cost. And we're just, I suppose, really pleased that the developers and the building owners have kind of understood that actually kind of none of it was anything to do with our fault and that they're doing the right thing and will be replacing the cladding.
Back at Greenwich, people are hoping they'll get a full timetable for the work soon. Chetna Gulati, for one, would like to be able to sell her flat.
Despite having a lovely new house in suburbia, we still miss that property because it was in the thick of things, the river's next door, there's always something happening at the Cutty Sark, stations, easy commute, and a good, thriving community. We miss all of that, but I'm not sure you could pay me enough money in the world to go back and live there.